Hey, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, ANY150, and we are now ready to turn our work in for Module 5. So this is our turn instructions for Module 5. So you guys will be turning in a high poly and low poly, all your modular assets, all the pieces that you see here. So I want you to go ahead and save your scene the way it is now. Okay, so save your scene. And don't save over top of this. Alright. Okay, so this is what I want you to turn in. So we're going to turn in a MB, FBX, and OBJ file. So this is how I want you to present your work for me. This is the low poly, and this is the wireframe. And so I don't really need wireframe on, so we can turn that off. I can always turn that on if I need to pull your stuff in. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rotate this and then just move it up. Rotate. I have step snap on. To do that, you can just double click on the rotation manipulator, and you can go to step snap relative and just type in something like 45 degrees and you're good to go. And so that's how I'm doing that. It just makes it easier for me. And then I've got grid snap on, so it snaps exactly where I want it to be. So I'm just gonna get these all situated where I want them. There we go. That's what I love about grid snap. Alright, so now we're gonna go in here. We'll just move those up. And we will move those down. Move those back. There we go. Okay, so, and then I want you to turn grid off, show grid. Just make sure you have to turn this back on if you need to. And this is what you're gonna save out to me with the low poly. This has got to be the low poly, right? Low poly. Alright, so I want you to go ahead and save that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do export selection, only the selection. Okay. And we're going to go down to this, do the MB file first. So we're going to export selection MB file. Export selection. I want your first, last name, MOD_05, and this is going to be low poly. Okay. All right. I'm going to save that one out. Export selection. I don't know how long it won't. It shouldn't take very long. Okay. Keep that selected. File. Export selection, go to FBS or OBJ, whatever's next. Okay. Same thing, Jeff, your name, first name, last name. And if I was smart, I would have highlighted this and copied that. Control C. There we go. And save that. Now you need to know where you're saving it, right? I probably should have been saving it to my desktop, but that's okay. So export selection. There we go. Okay, that took a little longer than usual. All right. And then we've got file, export selection. We're going to do the FBX. Okay. With this one, we got to turn on smoothing groups, smooth mesh. Everything else should be good. I'm going to go ahead and rename it and save it. Okay, great. So that's your low poly. Okay, then your high poly. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Okay. Again, same kind of thing going on here. Alright, so same thing. This is the high poly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete by type history. I see a little history on everything. And we're going to go to File, Export, Selection. We'll just start with FBX. And this time we're going to do a Control V. This time I'm going to type in high poly. Then export selection, and we're going to go to OBJ. This will be called high poly. It's going to take a little longer, a lot higher resolution. Alright, and then one last one, the MB file. Okay. That doesn't take near as long to save. Okay, so that is it. So the next thing I need you to do is, so we got the FBX formats for both high and low. And then the next thing we got to do is we're going to turn a left side and a front side perspective screenshots, wireframe on, of the high poly. Okay, so with these selected, okay, alright, so give me a screenshot like this with the high poly on, like that. And just kind of a perspective, and this will be stage left. No, it would be stage right. It doesn't matter. It's the left side. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and screenshot this. I don't know why I'm clicking on that. Go into your search bar and hit S for snipping tool if you're using Windows. And I'm going to go to rectangular snip, move that out of the way, and then just go ahead and snip this little area here and save that. And save it as your first name, last name. Let me do this. I can just Control V again. Well, like I said, won't let me do that. Alright, so first name, last name, MOD 05, and then it's a JPEG. We want JPEG, and then this will be front, right side, or whatever. That'll work. And that is, we need to save that as high poly. Alright, I'm going to copy this though, so I don't have to retype it. Control C, So that's the front right side. Okay, that's saved. Where did I save it? Desktop. Okay, good. Okay. And then we'll go to the other side. Like that. Snipping tool. Rectangular. Let's go ahead and snip that. I don't know why it doesn't remember. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Let's do left. There we go. Perfection. And that is good. And then we're going to go turn that off, and we'll go to the high or low poly. That's all set up and ready to go, which is kind of nice. And so we'll type in, we'll just do S, snipping tool, rectangular, and go ahead and snip that. And we'll call this low poly. Lowy poly. Let's get rid of the I. Okay, good. And then we'll do the other side, like that. Okay. Okay, that looks good. I think the only thing we have left to do is the render. So we got the screenshots, all of the screenshots that we need, front, high and low, and then we've got the renders. Okay, so with this, I'm going to go ahead and save this scene out. As a screenshots. There you go. And I'm going to open this one up as the last one I saved. Okay, it's back in this viewport here. Okay, so we just need renderings with the high poly. And that's not a problem. Turn the wireframe off. And so now we're going to get some render of, we need a little bit of the top, a little bit of the bottom. We can, not that the grid's going to show, but we'll just turn that off. And what I'm going to do is we're going to get Arnold set up here so we can get a good render. And so I'm going to go to display render settings, this guy right here, Arnold renderer 3222. This is the lowest settings that it just defaults at that. We'll keep it at that when we do a preview. And everything else is good. We'll start with an HD 540. We're not going to go full resolution. Full resolution is going to be, if you scroll down, it'll be HD 1080. That's a full resolution. But we usually don't start when we do lighting. Okay, so I kind of need some reflection on this time, and not a lot. So what we're going to do is I want you to hold the right mouse button down and go to Assign New Material. So select everything, Assign New Material. We're going to go to Arnold Shader. We're going to go to AI Standard Surface. Okay. And you should have it up there. Now, if you have to click on the arrow and you're clicking on it and holding it and it takes a long time to find this, then you have too much history. So go in there and delete your history. Okay, that's how you get rid of all this junk in there. So I'm going to do that, and you can see that when I select it, the IA Standard Surface comes up right away. I want you to rename it something that makes sense. So Psi, and then we'll do Phi Hallway, and this will be our texture underscore TX. Alright, so this isn't going to be our finalized texture, it's just going to be a basic texture. And again, you know, I have to kind of reiterate, this isn't really a lighting scenario for a real scene. This is a lighting scenario for you to turn your stuff in so I can grade you appropriately. Okay? So I'm hoping you guys understand that a real lighting situation is going to come up in the next video, Module 6, where we're going to actually have an indoor lighting scenario that we're going to actually try to get it photorealistic. I'm not doing photorealistic lighting when you show off your work to me, because I need studio lighting for that. I need it to be neutral lighting so I can grade you appropriately for your textures. So anyway, with that said, let's go ahead and get this lit up so we can show off the details. Right now it's impossible to take a screenshot and have all the details, even with when we go to viewport and turning on, even though this does help, the ambient occlusion, okay, simulation for the viewport. It helps, but it's not that great. Okay, so to get that a nicer looking reflection and stuff like that, and I have to be careful with too much reflection. I don't mind a little bit, but too much can cause problems as well. So I'm going to get kind of the right. I want to be able to see a little bit up here, and I want to see a little bit down here, and I want to see these pieces here. So I am going to have to move these two pieces over. Okay. Now let's do one at a time. Obviously it doesn't want to work if I do too many at once. Let's go ahead and do that one. There we go. I'm just trying to spread these out a little bit more because that one has a little more depth. There we go. So that, I think that will work pretty good. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to turn on the mask, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit to get that just right. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Arnold, and we're going to click on the Create Sky Dome Light. That automatically comes in at 1, intensity of 1. I don't think we'll use that. But we're going to do our first render. It should render fairly fast, even with the high res. Let's take a look at how fast it will render. I don't know if you have a machine that's maybe a little bit slower than mine. And if it is, then what we want to do, and we have it on low settings, so it shouldn't take too long. It took me 10 seconds. Maybe it'll take 40 or 50 seconds for you guys. I don't know. But right now it's too bright. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a darker color. So I'm going to go to Sci-Fi Hallway that I just had. Turn that up, the weight. And then I'm going to click and turn this not all the way to the lowest gray, but the one right before it. And let's go ahead and do another render real quick. And I'm just trying to get the material just right. And that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so alright, awesome. Okay, cool. And so the background, I don't need that to be white. that's distracting, and I really can't use black. We can't use gray. Maybe black would work. Let's try see what that looks. Let's give it a try and see how that. The problem is, yeah, I just need it to pop out a little bit more, and it pops out better with black or dark gray. Okay, we have to be careful. If we get black and black, then it doesn't show up at all. Alright, so the next step will be to play around with the levels. Okay, so with this in mind, I'm going to go ahead and turn that. Basically, this guy right here, if you click on it, it will put your frame, the frame you just rendered, in a buffer. Okay, so now that frame is buffered into your RAM. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it over. I have a dual monitor, so. And I'm going to kind of, let's get it set up again a little bit. And I'm going to bring this up to, let's say, 0.15. Just doing that much makes a difference. And we don't have to have black. We can do something with dark gray. Let's see what that looks like. And you can see that that's not dark enough, obviously. So let's put that in RAM. So which one looks better to you? This one or this one? This one pops out way more. So maybe we should do black. We'll see how the rest of the scenario goes. Okay. So we'll keep it at black. Right. So we got that figured out. All right. The next thing we're going to do is exposure. Let's do a 0.5 on that one, and we're going to do intensity of 0.5. Okay. Use color temperature right now. We could use that. I don't like right now. It's really white. Okay, the temperature is really high. So let's do it at 58. What that? Whoops, no, 5800. What that's going to do is going to introduce a little bit of warmth. Okay, you can see that changed a little bit. I don't mind a little warmth, even with studio lighting. 6000. Oops, I keep not typing in the right number. There we go. 6000 is still warm. What we had is 6800. It's almost blue, like a really light blue. Okay, it really defaults it out. Now, a lot of times I'll do 6000. It still introduces warmth though. It does. So let's go ahead and do a render with that. Okay, that looks good. Let's take a look. Okay, so you can see that warmth, and you can see how that changes the way your render looks. Okay, see, there's the 6800, there's the warmth, 6800 warmth. You know, I prefer this, to be honest with you, for actually seeing your work. Okay, so it really comes down to what I prefer, and I prefer this, so we're going to stick with that, and that's going to be around 6800. Or you can just use the default lighting, doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and shut that down. So we can turn the color temperature off. It's going to go right back where it was. Or I can just go ahead and use the default, which is that, and re-render it. We're at a lower level 2 with the lighting. We went 0.5 with exposure, so it's going to be lower lighting. The reason why I did that is because now I'm going to go into light sources and create a light. So I'm going to go ahead and dump that in real quick. And then I'm going to go to create a light, and we're going to do a directional light. We're just going to pop that up. And we want to give it a little bit of an angle, but not much. I'm going to turn the snap off because that's not really helping us now. So I'm going to turn that to off. And just kind of get it working towards, I want to see a little shadow but not a lot. Again, we're going to kind of play with this a little bit. I'm going to go to Arnold. And I'm not going to mess with the color temperature. And we're going to type in 1 for the exposure, and samples at 2. That is the quality of samples we have for our shadows. We want to cast a shadow. Okay, let's go ahead and render that and see what the differences are with that on. Okay, great. So that looks good. And we're rendering about 9 seconds. It's actually less than what we had before, which is kind of funny in a way. So we've got some shadows up here. We know it's working because I can see this part. Well, we want to be careful not to have too many shadows here. So we could actually put, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there so we can kind of see what the progression we have so far. So this is what we had without the directional light, and this is what we have now. Okay, so you can see that we're getting a nice result. So the idea here is that we're able to see these objects. Okay, this would be too dark, and this is just right. So we're doing good so far. Right, so let's go ahead and pipe that in, and let's go in here and change the angle. So we kind of know that we don't want it down so much, and we probably want maybe just a little bit like that. Okay, something like that, straight on, and then over to the right a little bit, or maybe a little bit to the left. We'll just see how that looks. Okay. All right, let's get a nice view. Let's get the whole thing in, because when I'm going to do 1080, I want to make sure it's just set up just right. Okay. So we need about a ½ inch on top, ½ inch on the bottom, and ½ inch or more on the sides. And we'll go ahead and re-render that. Okay, lighting, it takes some time. So don't freak out if you don't get it right the first time. Okay. You can see we've got shadows now on the floor. What's happening is hitting the front side and just placing a shadow, and that's not desirable. Okay, so let's go ahead, and we do need to lean it a little bit, and let's not do so much that way, something like that. Okay, just a little bit, and again let's go ahead and re-render. Okay. Alright, so we could do a couple things here. We could do a render that goes straight on like that, and then down a little bit like that, but not much. And then we could do a Control D, which duplicates this light, and move it over. Okay, and then have it go up. So we could have one going down and one going up like that. Okay, that way, and we have to be careful how we're contradicting. So this one will have the shadows and this one won't. So if I click on that guy, and I would type in the intensity of something like 0.5. The more lights you have in your scene, you have to turn them down. Otherwise, the scene will be too light, and we don't want to cast shadows on that one. Okay. Let's see what we got. I think it's going to be too bright myself. Personally, I think it's going to be too bright, so let's take a look. It's not too bad. Again, we can see the shadows that we have. Okay, so let's do since we've got lighting going up, you can see that's lighting's going up. We want to probably go in here, and if we turn that light a little bit higher, our shadows won't be so dark there. So again, we're just kind of tweaking things out, maybe not so high there. And let's bring this up to 0.6. And 0.6. and this one's still at 1. We could turn this one down too to something like 0.8 and 0.8. Okay, give that a render. Let's take a look. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and I think we got lots of shadows in here. Everything's looking pretty good, and we got some reflection on the floor, which means we can see some of that neat detail that we have. Everything seems to be reflecting the scene pretty good. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. It gives me a really good idea of your modeling skills and how you were able to finish everything up. Again, this is your high poly resolution mesh. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close it. You can see where we started from. Start from here, basic, and then worked our way up in to this. Okay, so you can see the difference. Alright, cool. And alright, so if you want it more dramatic, what you could do is we could go into here, and I'll show you. I don't know if I want this or not, but we could go brighter. We could go 1.2 on this guy right here. Let's take a look. Again, we're just experimenting, you know. And go into your light setup, put that in, and let's do another. Now the shadows should come out a lot darker, more dramatic. Also, your light or your shadows will be a little more dramatic tiers too as well. So let's see what that looks like next to the other one. That's even brighter. You have to be careful not to wash anything away. I almost like that, the brighter one. Let's do that. I think I like that better. So what did we end up with? Right, so let's go in here and soften up. And again, this will take a lot of time with your computer. You don't have to do this, but just to give you an idea. So with this light, we have a 1.2 intensity, 1.2 exposure, samples at 2. And the thing is, our angle, let's set that at 2. And what does that do? Well, again, it softens the shadows up in here. So let me talk about that real quick. So the shadows will be softened up here to make them a little more realistic. Again, we're not trying to do photorealism in here, so this will slow your computer down to a crawl, especially if you're doing a 1080. So if you don't have the time to render out soft shadows, then don't worry about it. Again, I'm just grading you on, you know, your work, not lighting, okay, really. So this is modeling. So I just need to see what you've got. So I think we're ready to do a full render. Let me do one quick render here, and we've got this at 13 seconds, so we are raising the amount of time it takes for a small render. So you can see how the shadows are a lot softer right in through there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's good. You can see the difference between the two. Okay, the reason why they're kind of rough and pixelated, they're a little pixelated with the, you know, the fringe pixelation right there. That has to do with the amount of samples we have. Okay, we can go up to 3, but that would really raise it up. Right now we went from 13 to 14. Okay, so we're closing that. Go back into your render settings, and this is what we're going to render at. So between 5 and 6. Okay, so I'm going to go to 6 and 3. Whoops. 3, 3, 3. And then we don't need anything. We're not using transmission. Probably don't even need to do that. But We're not going to do SSS and volume indirect. We're going to keep those at 2. We don't need environment. Ray depth, there we go. So 12 on that, 2 on diffuse, 2 on specular, 10 on transmission, and 12. This is pretty much overkill, but it will look good, and we're going to go ahead and change this to 2080. Now, your aspect ratio won't change, okay? So you don't have to worry about changing your camera, but I'm going to change it just a little bit just to get it in frame so it'll look nice. Like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the render, and then I'm going to pause the video. Alright, so we've got the renders in. They're rendering at, just to kind of give you an idea, 7.22 on my computer, and it's about 2 years old, but it's a pretty fast system, so you're going to expect to see higher renders times than this. Maybe double, maybe triple digits, I don't know. I have no idea what you guys have going on at home, but give yourself lots of time for render time. And if you have to go lower, you know, with the numbers, you can. It just won't. They won't turn out as nice. They'll be a little grainy. So, so I need these two. So you can see I just turned this over a little bit so I can see more of this one. And you can see we got some bright lights. That's because the light is shining off and reflecting off that object. But this is perfectly presentable. This will work just fine. These two shots, these two render shots. I don't like that, but I would have to probably go a little more like this to get it from shining too much. So, and that would work too. That kind of a shot would work too as well. Okay, so with that said, now all you have to do is you just have to go into the file system, get all the files, and place all of your work in the appropriate files. Zip it up into a main folder following the folder structure, and then upload it into Canvas. And I wish you all the best of luck. I can't wait to see you guys' work, and we will see you in the last module, Module 6. It's hard to believe. Module 6 is our last module, and that's when we're going to texture and put everything together, create a scene, and light a scene. So next week is going to be a big week for everybody, so make sure you get this stuff done and uploaded. Don't let this be the late one, because we've got to get right into it. I cannot give you backup files for this. This is all you. Next week is our last week, and then we have our final exam, and you guys are good to go. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun, and I'll see you next week.